What's up, YouTube? This is your boy John from the Jersey Shore, and I am back with you today to give you my review of the 2016 film, The Autopsy of Jane Doe. The Autopsy of Jane Doe was written by Ian Goldberg and Richard Nang. It was directed by Andre Ovradal, starring Brian Cox, Emil Hirsch, Ophelia Lovibond, and Olwen Catherine Kelly as Jane Doe. So our story begins with some investigators checking out a homicide at a house. They go downstairs and they discover that there is a body buried in the basement. That body turns out to be our Jane Doe, and it's time to get her over to the coroner's office. Once we get to the coroner's office, we meet Tommy and we meet his son Austin. These are our two main characters in the story. So before they get Jane Doe delivered to the coroner's office, Tommy and Austin are actually getting ready to call it a night. They're getting ready to roll out. Austin's got a date. Tommy's just going to go home. But right before they leave, they bring in, the detectives bring in Jane Doe. They tell them that they have ID on everybody else that was murdered inside of this house, but they have no information whatsoever on this girl. He asks that they can have a report done tonight if possible, so that they can get a little more information on her. So they decide to, or Austin cancels his date, and Tommy decides, okay, we're going to stay here, we're going to have a long night, but we're going to get that report for you.
No ID, no fingerprints in the system. For now, she's a Jane Doe.
He needs my help right now. 11 o'clock, I'm all yours.
So on the outside of this body, on the surface, this girl looks fine. The only thing that's a little bit unusual is her eyes are completely, clouded over. Her eyes are gray, basically. And Tommy says that the only way that someone's eyes are that gray is if they've been dead for days. So for a little further examination, they find that both of her wrists and both of her ankles have been broken. She has no bruising. She shows no signs whatsoever of any kind of, stress on those joints, but they are shattered nonetheless. They're not just broken, they're shattered. Shattered wrists, shattered ankles, and they see that there's something under her fingernails. They dig a little bit under her nails. They realize that it's not blood, it's not dirt, it's peat. So Tommy says that it's very dense. He recognizes it immediately, but he hasn't seen that in quite some time. Eventually, they open up Jane Doe's mouth and realize that her tongue has been severed. It's not something, she didn't bite it off under any stress or anything like that. There's jagged edges that show that her tongue was cut out of her mouth. That was a little unexpected. When they opened her mouth, I jumped a little. So now they're really getting into this examination. They find that one of her molars is missing. They find that she has a long piece of thread in her throat.
What happened to you?
They open her up and then they find her molar wrapped up in a piece of cloth in her stomach. Somebody pulled her molar out, wrapped it in a piece of cloth, and made her swallow it. What in the hell happened to this girl?
First, they bound her. Then they ripped out her tongue, poisoned her, paralyzed her, forced her to swallow the cloth.
After a little bit more examination, they realized that there is scarring on her heart. They realize that there is scarring on all of her internal organs, almost like she's been stabbed multiple times. They realize that her lungs are burned up to the point where Tommy actually says, anybody whose lungs look like this, you would expect to see their body completely covered in third-degree burns. So while they're examining this girl, strange things start to happen inside of the coroner's office. The lights are going in and out. At one point, the fluorescent lights actually break. The radio is tuning in and out. The power is going on and off. It's just something unworldly is going on here.
Dad?
I gotta tell you, this movie was surprisingly good. I heard quite a few things about this movie online, saying that it was a very good movie, that it was a very surprising movie, and I had actually seen it advertised on Netflix before I read anything about it. When I finally took the time to sit down and watch this movie, I was completely blown away by this. This movie legitimately had the hairs on my arms standing up. The pacing of the movie is fantastic. It starts off reasonably quick. I mean, there's a little bit of, pardon me. I mean, there's a little bit of character development at the beginning of the movie, but it's not anything, overly time-consuming. It's not a long, drawn-out process. They find this girl right away. They get her to that coroner's office right away, and they start examining her right away. It's pretty quick. And while they're doing this, you can actually start to see the concern in both Tommy and Austin's eyes. Step by step, the further that they dig into this body, the more concerned that they get. Like any coroner's report, I'm sure, this body is telling them a story. It's giving them pieces to a puzzle. This puzzle is not something that they're used to seeing. It's very disturbing. The way that they describe the injuries to this girl's body, you would think that this body looked like it would look like it'd been through a meat grinder by the time it got to them, but it doesn't. She looks pristine. And there's a few other really cool aspects to this movie as well that I'm not going to get into in here. I think it's important that you watch this movie and you see what I'm talking about. I highly recommend this movie. You got to watch it. But there are other things going on around Tommy and Austin while they're performing this autopsy on this body. And it truly is scary. You feel the tension building moment by moment by moment by moment in this movie, and I just thought it was amazing.
It's amazing!
For the most part, there's Brian Cox and Emile Hirsch are the characters in this movie. I mean, Jane Doe is there, and she's present throughout the whole movie. But, I mean, literally, she's naked laying on a gurney. The whole movie, start to end. Well, she's naked laying in a hole at the beginning of the movie. Then she's in a body bag. Then she's on the table. But Brian Cox and Emile Hirsch are the main characters that you see throughout this whole thing. You see Emile Hirsch's girlfriend briefly. You see a cop briefly. But, it's those two guys that carry this whole story along, and they did it impeccably. It was fantastic. Last night when I finished watching this movie, I said to my wife, I wonder how much Olwen Catherine Kelly made for this movie. She literally doesn't have to do anything. But, that's understated. She spends the entire hour and a half of this movie naked. She's pale white, laying on a table, completely buck naked, with two guys pawing all over her body. So, I would be curious to what the paycheck was for her in this movie. I think my wife's exact words were whatever it wasn't enough. So yeah, the Autopsy of Jane Doe. If you enjoy being completely freaked out watching a movie and have no idea what in the world's going on, watch this movie. It is absolutely fantastic. I could not recommend this movie any higher. That was upside down. Yeah, that's better. The Autopsy of Jane Doe. Check it out. You will not be disappointed. Alright folks, that is going to do it for my review of The Autopsy of Jane Doe. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you really like this video and you are enjoying my content, please do me a huge personal favor. Click that subscribe button. After you click that subscribe button, ring that notification bell. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Have a kick-ass day, and thank you for watching.